Oh, you're back. Okay, welcome back to Intermediate Writing. Professor Kent Lee here. In this video, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to go through an article that I wrote and explain not only the use of sources, but also compare academic research articles with the kind of stuff that you're writing. Give you some guidelines for how you want to write your papers and stuff you're not going to do that's done in research articles, although you might do this later if you go to graduate school for master's or PhD. Secondly, if I have time, I'm going to come back to something I left out from an earlier lecture. We were talking about logical fallacies, and there was something that I assigned from page 113 in the book on fallacies, an example I forgot to talk about. Silly me. It was on like the back side of this paper when I was doing my lecture. Come back to it because it's a useful and informative example. Okay. Chicago style. We were talking about Chicago style last time, and I have this article that I wrote with my co-author colleague back up in Seoul. And I'm just going to go through this and talk more about the use of sources in such papers. Some of them will be things that maybe you should do in your papers, and then some things are kind of more you should know about because this is how academic research papers are written, which are maybe some things you won't do, but you should know this because you may be using some of these as sources. I invited you to maybe look for some sources on ris.co.kr for sources that are published in Korea. Many of them will be written in Korean, some in English. You can cite Korean sources. You should also cite some English sources for your papers too, but some Korean is fine. And of course, the RIS will break it down into different categories. So if it's a PhD dissertation, don't cite that, please, because you really can't honestly say that you read a 200-page PhD dissertation, a Saksa Nonmun or Baksa Nonmun, that is. You can't, and you probably can't understand those. Is too much. Master's thesis, again, those are kind of long, and you can't really meaningfully read and use and cite those or claim that you did. Those could be 20 to 40 pages long, and they may not be so great. It may or may not be because it's someone's first attempt at original academic research. So it may not be that great. You can get journal articles that are published, by academic research journals in Korea, and these will probably be easier to read than those published in international journals. They're probably easier for you to read and to use, and these can include, journals that deal with business research, and articles in different journals that maybe look at different companies, different organizations, and they may not be case studies. That's fine. Don't have to be, but they can provide valuable information on the kind of business or organization or program that you're looking at. Research on similar programs, similar companies, similar education programs, community service programs, charities, NGOs, etc., etc. Then you can also look at Google Scholar. As long as those articles are articles you can actually read, meaningfully understand, and meaningfully use in your papers, that's fine too. So let me go through the article that I wrote kind of briefly. In academic research articles that are published in research journals, the first thing you'll see is an abstract. That's kind of a nice summary. It includes kind of the research question or the author's main thesis or research finding or conclusions, and a bit about the implications. So it's kind of a very nice summary. You should look at those to see, do I want to read this article? Do I want to download, print it out, and such. Oftentimes when you do online searches, you come across maybe the abstracts for the articles, and you can read those and judge them. By the way, if you find especially an international article that is from an international research journal that's behind a paywall that says, you'd like to get this article? Well, you got to pay us $30 or £20, 30 euros. Don't do it. Email the author and say, hey, could you email me a copy of your article? They're usually happy to do so. Or look for a site called Sci-Hub, Sci-Hub, where articles have been kind of made available, maybe not so through legal means, but the fact that publishers put paywalls behind articles, that's not ethical. Most research is done with public funds of some kind, university funds, and then to give the research to a publishing company, and the publishing company takes exclusive rights over that and says, hey, you want that article? Got to pay us. That's not right. It's not ethical. But unfortunately, that's the way it is. And so sites like Sci-Hub exist for people who need articles to get them. Okay, so back to this article. Introduction. You'll notice that the introduction section is several paragraphs long. This is going to be different from the papers you write in classes like mine, or typical college papers. Your introduction should be one paragraph. Keep it to one paragraph. Now you can have an introduction, and then you can have, before your body paragraphs, you can have one or two, maybe three background paragraphs with background information. And now here, in academic research articles, specific background information about the topic, including the university and the general situation is, it's a lot more complicated. So you've got multiple paragraphs in a typical introduction, and kind of the main objective is stated maybe at the end of this introduction section. Your intro section will be one paragraph, and in this paragraph you should state your research question, or research question and your main conclusion if you're kind of doing your own original analysis. So for example, this paper intends to look at reasons why AMD declined in market share and then suddenly pulled ahead 2 years ago. My conclusion is because of the CEO's masterful restructuring of the company. Well, don't use my, but something like that. So a research question at least, or a research question and then kind of your main thesis. Your thesis is the reason why AMD came back, this company came back, is because of a very ingenious restructuring program, the way that the CEO restructured the company. A CEO named Lisa Su took over the company some years ago and really turned it around. It's quite a story, by the way. It would be a good topic for a paper, hint, hint. Okay. Next, another kind of background information in academic papers is research about the very same topic. Research that deals specifically with that very same topic. It's called a literature review section. Literature as in published research, literature in academic research, journals and academic books, and other academic sources about this very specific topic. In this case, the topic is EMI in Asia, especially in Korea. So here I've cited a number of different studies that are relevant to the research question of this paper. So for your case studies, this is maybe part of your background section. If you have a background section, you're not going to you don't need to do a separate lit review section, but it will be helpful if you can find research, published research on the company, on the educational institution, or on the type of program that you're doing, or a similar type of company, a similar type of program, similar types of institutions. I mean, similar like in the same country and same kind of level and type of institution, in that specific issue. Like if you're talking about English in Korean high schools, then cite sources about English teaching in Korean high schools, maybe middle schools. They should be relevant and related. And that's why I'm recommending that you go to sites like RIS to find relevant sources. Maybe you can find other case studies that people have published, as well as other kinds of academic research. You don't need to cite just case studies. There may be other kinds of research that's relevant, as well as information from more professional publications, business publications, like those in my professional publications website. A list of types of professional and kind of semi-professional publications you can look at and go to, and relevant sources from news magazines, business news, general news magazines, science news magazines, whatever, professional publications about education and such. You can cite those kinds of things. And again, if you want to restate or kind of tweak or modify your research question at the end of a background section, okay, you can do that. In a paper like mine, the research questions are actually presented at the end of the literature review section. That's typical for academic research papers, either there or at the end of the introduction section. The research question is stated specifically. Now, the next sections, if you find these in academic papers, you can probably read through kind of quickly. The next section is a discussion of like the research methods and also the kind of research model or theoretical model that's maybe used for analyzing the data. You're not applying your own research model. You're not ready for that yet. That's something you might do in graduate school. You will learn different theoretical models in graduate school in different areas and then start to practice applying them to research and analyze data. You're not doing that. You're just finding what data you can, describing it, and doing your best to analyze it. Your data might be data from company websites, data from professional publications, news publications, kind of more qualitative and general stuff, and you're trying to put it together in a way that makes sense. Anyway, so this section about the research methods, and in this case statistics, you can kind of skip or go through quickly. Maybe kind of too much for you. The important stuff is if you're reading an academic research article, the important stuff is in the introduction of the lit review and then the general discussion section. So the general discussion section is next. Here, well, I kind of summarize the results of the data analysis, the statistics, hit the key points, and then what does it mean? What does it mean? What are the implications? And it, well, kind of means that these poor graduate students, they have troubles with English. I mean, they're having to take courses in English in graduate school at a university in Korea, but it seems like their self-confidence in their specific English abilities and their actual English abilities are not quite ready for this. So those are my conclusions based on the data analysis. Then I talk about, okay, what does it mean? And I compare it, and I interpret it and compare by, for example, contrasting and comparing with other research. This kind of, well, there hasn't been much research on this in terms of grad students in Korea, but it does agree with at least these one or two studies that I do have about graduate students and EMI in Korea. But my results go further and help us to understand a lot more in terms of this and this and this. So contrasting and comparing in order to interpret my results and explain my results. Now maybe I can compare with other people who found something similar. I can also compare it with other people who have different results and kind of explain why my results or their results are different from mine. And maybe there's a good reason. The way we did things was just different, or our assumptions were different, or the type of students we were studying were different. Contrast and comparison. So through all this, I'm going to cite sources. Maybe somebody has some opinions, some scholars have expressed some opinions, criticisms of EMI, and say, my results could support those criticisms. Or some others have said, oh, EMI is great for these reasons, and then I can say, well, that doesn't hold up because my results don't really agree with that. And so opinions like that person's, we kind of have to be careful about. It may not really hold true. And I talk about implications, recommendations, suggestions, in terms of like, okay, if universities are going to do EMI, they need to implement it better, and then they need to provide enough support services for students. Here I'm talking about graduate students, and I cite other sources that talk about kinds of support programs to help students, to support graduate students, to help people who might be going into academic careers and need to use English for academic careers. So I cite other sources that talk about different kinds of relevant programs that could be used to help students and other things to do to help with these students' kind of motivation problems or their lack of confidence in English. Conclusions. So those are some things that you might do in your papers. Looking at programs, talking about evaluating them, the strengths and weaknesses, what do other scholars have to say that might be relevant, what do other research studies have to say that might be relevant, what can you gather about the effectiveness of this program or this company's marketing strategy or this company's merger or this company's strategy or whatever. And I talked about that a lot in the previous lecture. Okay, if you have any questions about this, let me know. Again, the last class lecture of the semester will be sort of suspended because instead, I often do this in my writing classes. If it's a regular in-class, live class semester, you would come to class and I would have you do the last day working in groups to kind of critique each other's work and give each other feedback, and I would give you feedback there too. Can do this in a Zoom class, so instead I'm going to say, okay, I'll give you plenty of time over the next couple of weeks. Come to a Zoom session, like a Zoom consultation session, and let me know how things are going, ask me questions, tell me about problems you're having. If you can't do that, I'll give you the option of doing it by email this time, because not too many people came last time. So there's that. Now the last thing, let me revisit the topic of logical fallacies. There was an example on page 113 that I forgot to talk about in my last lecture. Okay. So this one really combines a lot of different fallacies into one. So here we have two college students, Bill and Joe, talking about feminists and feminism. And it shows a lot of fallacies and straw man, especially straw man arguments and ad hominem personal attacks against feminists. And straw man because it totally these are typical arguments you hear against feminism, and they're straw man arguments because they distort, even misrepresent, and lie about what feminism really is about. Bill talks about, okay, there's this feminist girl. He calls her a chick, which is kind of a slang term for a woman. So there you see Bill is kind of sexist to begin with. He's got some bad assumptions. He talks about how she has a bad attitude. She had some bad experiences with guys. Okay, most feminists are not like that. There are a few women who have had bad experiences with men. In that case, it's understandable if they don't like men. They may feel like that for a while. It's maybe a temporary thing. I mean, who would blame them? I mean, some women have been treated pretty badly by men. Abusive relationships, sexual assault, discrimination, harassment. So yes, it's understandable that some women have some hard feelings, but that's not really what feminism is about. There might be a few radical feminists, but those are not typical or representative. I don't even know what a radical feminist is. I've never met one. I've known plenty of feminists. I myself am pro-feminist, and we're not anti-male, definitely not. So this guy, he says, oh, they're all radical feminists. They hate men, all about women taking control over men. They want to get rid of marriage. They don't like masculine men, real men. They want men to be weak. They want to get back at men for being oppressed. Those are all totally wrong statements. Kind of overgeneralizing, taking maybe this one stereotype. It's like, okay, maybe there's one woman who's really angry at men. She's had some bad experiences. You can't take that as a stereotype, as a basis for a stereotype. That's just wrong. So that's the kind of stereotype-related fallacies that we talked about before. It's like if I have one bad experience with a green-skinned alien from Mars, I can't generalize and say, oh, all aliens are bad and they want to kidnap you and poke you and take your money and stuff. That's wrong. But seriously, though, these are based on false stereotypes of feminists. Feminists simply want equality. They talk about toxic masculinity, that is, forms of masculinity that are unhealthy, like men harassing women and treating women as sex objects. They want men to enjoy healthy masculinity, and so they actually care about freeing men. And as a man, I feel more free because I'm not constrained by someone's expectations of what it means to be a real man. I can enjoy sci-fi instead of sports. I don't really watch sports that much, and I'm cool with that. And hey, I may not be able to repair a car, but I can sure build or fix a computer. Hey, there's more money there. Feminism is about men having a healthy image of men, what it means to be a man, and women being equal, not taking control over men, but just an equal playing field, equal rights. That's all it is. Most feminists are pro-marriage. Almost all of them are for marriage. It's just they want people to have a choice in the matter. It's not like you should get married because you have to or because society is pressuring you to. You should, get married if you want to. Have kids if you want to. If you don't want to have kids, that's cool. Not everyone should have kids. Not everyone should get married. And they're not, in general, trying to take revenge against men. This is not true. Read some actual feminists, for God's sake. Please, know what you're talking about before you criticize people and before you stereotype and overgeneralize, or we say paint some group with a broad brush. To paint something with a broad brush, like to overgeneralize and stereotype a group of people. You should not let someone tell you what it means to be a man or a woman. If you're a guy, it's up to you to define masculinity for yourself. If you're a woman, it's up to you to define what it means to be a woman, to be feminine. It should be your choice. It should not be because somebody forces their view of masculinity and femininity upon you, especially cultural stereotypes. Sure, I like to do exercise and lift weights. I enjoy it. But it's because I define masculinity for myself. I realize it should be a healthy definition of masculinity. It should be respecting women and their rights and their bodily autonomy, by not feeling threatened by men who seem more macho. It should be healthy. Being a man means I should take care of my body. I shouldn't stuff my body with junk food and be overweight, and I should exercise. That depends on you. To be a man, to be a woman, it depends on you. Yeah, take care of your body, be healthy, exercise, eat properly, but otherwise have a healthy view of gender roles and your gender role. That's kind of my thoughts. I know this is not related to academic writing, but some of you might be writing papers that deal with gender issues at a company or an organization or institution. If not, when you get out into the real world, into the work world, you're going to be dealing with this because this is a problem of our times in any country, gender issues in the workplace or in school environments. So we should all have clear heads about this and not fall into stereotypes and fallacies. And if you want to do a paper that deals with gender issues in a case study, that's excellent, by the way. Okay, I guess that's it for now. Enough rambling from me. I've talked about Chicago style. I've talked a bit about source uses in papers, and especially how you can deal with academic papers if you're using academic papers in your research for this class or for your other classes. And I think this might be my last lecture. I got to check the calendar because the last day of the semester, week 14, I think, is going to be just either you come to my Zoom consultation session or do by email, consult with me by email. There's some makeup classes, which I've already done. They were kind of included in the LMS for those holidays back in the week that the holidays took place. So I think that should be it. So I guess this should be it. If I think of anything else, I'll post it in the LMS. I'll probably post some more links in the LMS, like those that I've talked about here. So good luck on your papers. Good luck in the semester, rest of the semester, your finals and your other classes. Good luck with everything. And I wish you a successful end of semester time and end of the school year. Goodbye. Good luck. Take care.